So again, the best guess is like, he just hates Henry. He's just mad at Henry, petty about Henry. Ladies, gentlemen, and those with the good sense to do away with the whole notion, I welcome you to the premier audio medium for all your Fazbear entertainment needs, the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. Note, FFPP is not responsible for any loss of appetite, disinterest, dismemberment, or other legally classified statuses. So strap in and enjoy. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. I'm your host, the toast, RyeToast, here to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's like we always do. I had a little mini heart attack just before recording this. If I seem out of it, my video went up, the Steel Wool teaser video, dating when I'm recording this, I guess. I went up like 5 minutes before I hit record, and some of the comments went, "Hey, why is the chapters from the last video description was wrong too?" And I realized I had 2 tabs of my channel, my YouTube studio open. One of them had the previous description and stuff, and then I was updating everything on the other one, putting the ads on the other one, doing all this, save, close, did something else, came back, saw the tab was still open, closed, save changes, sure. That was on the first tab, and it reverted all the information from the description and ads from today's video to last week's video. So I was just like speed running it to get it, like, because once you upload a video, if you unlist it and then re-upload it, it just destroys the algorithm of that video. So I was like, okay, I need to do this right now or else the video's done. So I'm like still high on that adrenaline, for lack of a better term. But we're going to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's like we always do. But let's talk about some Five Nights at Freddy's. So our first question is from Patreon. We have a couple Patreon questions and then some email questions to round us out. First one comes from, if you want your questions answered on the podcast, you can either send them in via email at freddyfazbearpizzapodcast@gmail.com. It's in the description, copy and paste, it's a pain to type out. But I frankly, I get a lot of emails and I do my best to answer them all, but I'm not going to be able to. If you want your questions answered on a priority, I do offer that now on the Patreon, which you can find in the description as well. It just, it's a little bit to try to give back to the people who are supporting, to say thank you. Anyway, our first question comes from the Patreon, comes from Ginger, she, they. I've heard you and other theorists posit that Elizabeth's death was a result of the Circus baby capture mechanism working too well, or being faulty in some capacity. Is there a reason that people believe the funtimes were meant only for capturing and not also for killing? Is it an assumption people are making in order to place the funtimes earlier in the timeline, i.e. before William was in full murder mode? Or is there evidence from the books I'm missing? It's a good question, Ginger. Honestly, on the face of it, I took a second to look up the blueprints again, because I feel like most of the information we have about the funtimes and how they work come from those blueprints showcasing, Circus Baby, Ballora, Funtime Foxy, and Funtime Freddy. The ones we get from the extras menu of Sister Location, where on Circus Baby and Funtime Freddy, you can see the outline of like a child-shaped thing curled up inside the stomach of Circus Baby and a Funtime Freddy. So I went to double check those, see if there's anything there. I'm going to be so real. On the face of it, I'm not seeing any... maybe I'm forgetting something. I can't see any evidence or reason for that general assumption that it was just meant to kidnap and went wrong. Fair point. I think the assumption was that, it just made more sense that something that scoops up a kid and puts it inside the body of the animatronic, maybe just capturing them for experimentation later. Because, if it kills someone on a job and then 4 hours later there's just a weird, gross corpse inside of an animatronic, is that useful to William Afton? Who can say? I think the logic was, especially this is when Sister Location first came out, people were speculating this, that William Afton would want to do the murder himself to get more remnant out of the kid. However, that it's, from what I can see, let me know in the comments if I'm forgetting something crucial here, it does seem like it's just that, an assumption. And looking back with what we know now, especially the whole idea that the sister location animatronics are meant to recreate the MCI, right? Killing a child by shoving them inside of an animatronic suit. It might just kill them. That might be the goal, is just to find a kid by themselves, scoop them up, kill them, and then, if the thing's possessed by the end of the night, we have a success. Which would make even more sense why William was so harsh against, you are not allowed to be even close to her. It's you are not allowed to be near her whatsoever, William says, not watching his 5-year-old while next to Circus baby. It is a little crazy that I think it just shows the desperation of William Afton. It's a little crazy that he makes this giant machine of yes, it's an animatronic that the second it's alone with a child, it kills them. And he didn't put a single failsafe against anyone. He didn't want to, have it scanned to make sure that it's not his own daughter who's fascinated with the robot or anything. But you're right to point out that, it's one of those things. A lot of older FNAF points of lore that are speculation. Once they're around for a while, a lot of them get taken up as fact. And you're right to point that out and poke holes, and it's very good for the health of the lore and the fandom to look back at old theories, look back at old assumptions, and be like, is this true? What is the evidence for this? Why did we think this at the time? Why do we still think this? Because, the way that lore and theories tend to go, once a piece of lore is around for a while, people stop remembering where that came from or why we think that, and they just remember the factoid. And, it's a theory, it's a proposition, it's not a fact. But over enough time, this game's been out for 12 years this year. Been around for a while, and over time, when a game is around that long, and these theories persist for 10 plus years, people just kind of take them for granted and assume they're fact. I know I kind of have done that myself with this idea. So it is always good to look back at the older bits of the fandom, of the lore, and really is that true? Is that true? Really lock in and try to figure that out. So, again, I think you're right to point it out. I think you're right to poke a hole in it. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong. I can't find a single reason why we all assume that to be true, besides the fact of besides the assumption, rather, that we thought that was the case at the time, because, why would, William would want to experiment on the kid with Remnant at the bunker, not in the middle of a birthday party. I'm really distracted by the... Yeah, it's better. But, yeah. Hopefully, I thought I was wrapping up that question. I think I was at the end of the question. I got so distracted by that light reflection that I forget. I think I've said all I had to say, though. So thank you for your question. I will move on. ADHD brain is in control today. Our next question comes from Phil. Him. I have a theory about William's motive for killing Charlotte. Insert disclaimer about motive and justification not being the same thing. I appreciate it, as always. Whenever I hate the whenever discussing why did William kill the MCI? What was his motivation? The comment of, there's no justification for it. That's a whole new sentence. It's a whole new sentence. People have reasons for the reason. People have whys for what they do. Everybody has a why for what they do. Whether or not it's correct, whether or not it makes any logical sense, people do things for reasons. And it might be helpful to know those reasons. It's a horrible, in William Afton's case, it's a horrible, messed up reason that is not justifiable in any way, but it's still an internal reason why. While the MCI and DCI have relatively understood motives, Charlotte's murder has always been different. She wasn't just some random kid at his restaurant, she was his business partner's daughter. I think at some point after the crying child's death, William played the grieving father and brought Henry in to help with his efforts to recreate M1. William doesn't really care about bringing his kid back, but it's a good proof of concept so he can obtain immortality through possessing an animatronic. After still being unsuccessful, William starts to feel Henry isn't really trying. So one rainy night, William does the one thing he knows that will push Henry to figure it out. He kills Charlotte. Now Henry will have pain to push him harder. Her death may have Her death may have pushed Henry to agree to some of William's sketchier ideas. We know he had some input on the funtimes from Pizzaria Simulator's insanity ending. Maybe in his grief he was able to be conceived. No. Maybe in his grief he was able to be convinced to design some of William's crazier ideas, not really understanding how they would be used. Thank you for a question. I agree. Now, I don't know if this is definitely true, but I really like this motivation for William Afton. In fact, I like it so much that, if I remember, I'll put the video right here. A couple years back, I made a video on this topic. The idea of William Afton killing Charlotte to motivate Henry to help him build the sister location animatronics. Now, this is pre-Secret of the Mimic, so we didn't really know about M1 at this point. But I do like this motivation a lot, right? The idea of William, we know William is a manipulator. So the idea of like William Afton trying and failing to, bring back the crying child or make the sister location animatronics or work with M1 or insert whatever you need here that is semi-motivated by the death of the crying child, killing Charlotte. Some time passes. William puts his arm around Henry. He's like, I don't know what we're going to do, Henry. I wish I could bring them back. I'd do anything to bring them back, Henry. I swear sometimes I hear his voice. I know that sounds crazy, but do you hear Charlotte's voice? And then the conversation goes from there. Something, help me build a murder robot to bring back our children, Henry. I like this motivation a lot for William Afton because Charlotte's death has always been weird. Charlotte's death has always been weird. She's been the one where it's like he seems to have just driven up, killed her, and driven away. I think a lot of us, going back to the whole we shouldn't just assume the assumptions from 10 years ago are true. A lot of us, 8 years ago, Pizzaria Simulator came out. A lot of us have kind of been, I guess no, this would have been from FNAF 2 for Take Cake to the Children, and just reiterated it in 6. Regardless, a lot of us have been looking at this and assuming that this was a crime of opportunity. Because looking at the staging of Midnight Motorist and Security Puppet, assuming they're the same game or the same scene, which I think makes a lot of sense, we see William Afton, who's not allowed back into Junior's, which many believe is a bar, speeding home, getting back to his house, and shouting about something, and then the cutscene ends. But the thinking was, piecing this together, the thinking was, well, if William Afton's not allowed back inside of a bar, maybe he was just kicked out for being too drunk, which is something that bars will do. If you get too drunk to take care of yourself or be a meaningful patron, you get kicked out. So the thinking is, William does all this. He drinks himself stupid, frustrated about everything that's going on, and then he gets kicked out, and he goes, you know what? That's it. I'm going to give Henry a piece of my mind. And the whole way over, he's white-knuckling the steering wheel. Fucking perfect Henry with his perfect animatronics, his perfect restaurant, his perfect family. Gets there. Sees Charlotte locked outside. Alone. Let's see how perfect your family is now. Kills Charlotte. Gets out of there. That's been the assumption for a long time. But there's a couple problems with it. One, very bold to just kill someone in the middle of the street. Very unlike William Afton. We know he did it, but is the motivation just that he was pissed? Got angry enough he killed a random kid? Furthermore, is William Afton the guy to get blasted at a bar, angry at Henry, drive down with intent to kill, and then settle on his daughter? William Afton is unhinged about Henry. We know this from the books. His journal writings about Henry were said, I'm pretty sure I can quote this, went from, and not exactly, but fairly close, went from seething jealousy to warped devotion. He was obsessed with how good Henry was at animatronics and was horrifically angry about how good Henry was with animatronics. You know, it was this thing that drove him insane. Well, that's not the only reason, but like, it was part of the reason why he was losing his mind about Henry. Was like, you're this god with animatronics, and I hate you for it. So we know he's got like a weird mixed up feeling set with Henry and, you know, the old man toxic Yowie. But the thing that like I think makes me hesitate with the idea of like it's this weird jealousy that caused him to kill Charlotte is, if I remember correctly, I don't even think we get a motive in the books. Because in the books, Charlotte and Sammy are the two children of Henry. And we just know that someday William Afton killed Charlotte. And Sammy Saul. That's all we know. That's all we know. I don't remember. Let me see if there was any motivation. Okay, yeah, so I did some reading up. It's never directly stated why William Afton kills Charlotte. So, again, the best guess is like, he just hates Henry. He's just mad at Henry, petty about Henry. But at the same time, like, I guess that's probably where it came from, is that in the books, we that was the only thing we had to go off of. So when we turned to the games, it's like, yeah, it's probably the same. So I like this concept of William Afton killing Charlotte to motivate Henry into helping him bring back a child, because now it's mutually beneficial. You can bring back your kid if you help me bring back mine, you know? And it gives us more of a concrete reason for why William Afton randomly kills Charlotte Emily. Rather than just, I don't know, he was bored. It's me when I'm bored, so I have to kill my business partner's daughter. But yeah, no, I like this theory a lot. Like I said, you watch that full video if you want more reasons why it could be that way. But thank you for your question. Our next one comes from Kit and y'all. One thing I hadn't heard mentioned is the difference between the Mimic in the manor versus how they were in the ending with the van crashing. The one where the Mimic takes the data diver. I noticed they limp as they leave. Like I'm thinking about the audio recording with Edwin and the Mimic. Edwin apologizes about needing to fix them, and the Mimic mentions their new legs, but we don't see any issue with the Mimic's legs in the manor when they chase down the player. Is it possible there's two Mimics? It just strikes me as an odd detail. Thoughts? No. I think the Mimic is limping because there was a van crash. Right? So thank you for your question. So if I understand your question correctly, in the manor, you know, the Mimic's running around just fine. In the chase sequence, the Mimic runs around just fine. But then after after it crashes our van, and you know, like the van's flipped upside down, it's on fire, it limps over to us, takes the data diver, and then limps away. You're right that it like walks weirdly slowly. We know this thing is fast. It walks weirdly slowly away. I think it just got damaged, right? Like it was on top of a van that crashed so bad that it's upside down and on fire. So surely the Mimic took some damage in that car crash, and I think it's limping away because of that. Frankly, that might have been its first repairs. We know the Mimic is able to take other pieces of animatronics and repair itself with it. That's why the one we see in Security Breach looks so different from the one we see in Secret of the Mimic. It's repaired itself over and over and over throughout the years. So that being said, that might be the reason for why some of it is already different by the time of Ruin. Is like by the time of Ruin, it looks, every limb is a different limb, the head is different, and that it just makes sense that it looks like that because it's been repairing itself over the years. So this first big car crash might be the first reason why it did that. Yes, I am standing because I guess I just can't record podcasts without getting EP anymore. Maybe podcasts are standing recordings moving forward. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that. I don't think there's any crazy conspiracy. I think it limps because it was just in a car crash. To springboard off of this though, I think if anything, we have evidence to suggest that there's only ever been one Mimic endoskeleton, because the one we see in the flashback when it's M1 looks identical to the one we see now. And I remember distinctly, Murray has a couple tapes about how he can't replicate the Mimic. He's been trying to make another M1, and he keeps failing. And I think part of that is the endoskeleton. So I think, at some point, M1 puts herself into F10 and 4 so that she can put M2 into the Mimic endoskeleton. So in that way, she can make her own M2. And then, even though Edwin said no, she can do it anyways. But yeah, I don't think there's two mimics. At least I don't think there's two physical mimics. But thank you for your question. I might be very tired, but luckily I do have somewhat of a solution. GAMERSUPPS. I have caffeine and non-caffeine flavors. I usually do 1 caffeine a day, and I'll do non-caffeine throughout the day. They also have AFK, which is their with or without melatonin sleep formula. The one without melatonin has, they might both have magnesium. I'm not sure. I know the one without melatonin has magnesium because that's the one we get. Because, I don't need melatonin, and my wife breastfeeds, so she can't have melatonin. And so it's just we don't need that right now. And they also have the thing I drink every time I work out, GAMERAID, which is their hydration formula with creatine in it. You can get any of that for 10% off your entire order with code RyeToast, and it does in fact support the channel when you use it. Thanks, GAMERSUPPS. Ooh, what could be fun? Flavor recommendations. Want my flavor recommendation today? Let me look up the name of it because I forget. Look, GAMERSUPPS, I love you guys. You gotta make the flavor clear in the title. It's so hard to talk about these goddamn flavors. Gunpowder Rush is my recommended flavor for you. It is apple grape. It's so good. It is by far my favorite flavor they have. I think the caffeine one is sold out right now. Oh no. Do they have a non-caffeine that isn't sold out? Maybe. Mayhaps. I'm not seeing it. Let me recommend you one that you can buy. Because it turns out, wouldn't you know it, I think they're actually currently out of Gunpowder Rush. It's very good. I highly, highly recommend it. I do like Bloodlust quite a bit. Bloodlust is blueberry something. Blackberry Limeade. I like that one a lot as well. I like their fruit flavors. So yeah, I recommend them. But on our next question, comes from Haley, she, her. Can Proto-Freddy's and Secret of the Mimic be the same location as Pizza Sim? Don't know if it can be. How can a building that's underground in Secret of the Mimic be above ground in Freddy Fazbear Pizza Simulator, as evident by the in-game cutscenes and alleyway pics? Then it sinks underground again via sinkhole and security breach. The only explanation I can have for how it can be underground is if the outside building is a shell and inside is an elevator to the pizzeria. That doesn't seem reasonable for customers to do. Plus, I don't think the shell idea even works as the Pizza Sim location security breach. What would be an outdoor entrance connected to the indoor pizzeria? Not outdoor entrance, then elevator, then pizzeria. I was listening to a T-Dubs VOD a couple of months ago, and someone who's a regular on there, can't remember who, made their prediction on the continuing of the Ruin story. They said they think the twist will be that Roxy we hear at the end of Ruin is going to be revealed to be the Mimic. Which I think is crazy to consider to be the Mimic wearing Cassie's best friend's body and you hear her dead friend's voice. That would be crazy. It's funny, I actually brought this up on a T-Dreads VOD when we were talking about the Psychic Friend Fredbear plushie. Funny that you mentioned it, but thank you for your question. I think Proto-Freddy's is Pizzeria Simulator because I don't think it was ever above ground. This is the argument I have to make a lot because I understand Pizza Sim presents itself like the simulator is above ground and it's a real business. I think it is a real business, but the one we're using to fund the underground pizzeria is a separate building. Let me explain. I think the point of Pizzeria Simulator, and this is Fazburger, right? You may have heard this theory tossed around a lot, Fazburger. The idea that, all of the locations are essentially stacked on top of each other. A variant of that is that they're all the same location. So this is, walk with me. MCM, big building, parking lot, mountains around the sides, FNAF warehouse off to the side. Underground Proto-Freddy's. MCM goes away at some point. A Freddy's location is open on the grounds. That closes at some point, becomes Juniors. But the underground stuff is still there. So there's Juniors with underground Proto-Freddy's. We know that there's underground laboratories under the FNAF 4 house from Murray's Costume Manor. those are eventually renovated into the sister location bunker, right? That way, William Afton doesn't have to build this massive sprawling thing of bunkers. They're already there. He just has to renovate them and use them in a different way. And then somebody pointed out something very smart. That sister location has the private office with observation rooms that is shaped exactly the same as Proto-Freddy's, except for the fact that the furthest room is smaller than it is in Secret of the Mimic. So the logic here is that this Proto-Freddy's is when I say by private office observation rooms, the Ennard night, the custom night, and sister location when you're in the office, it's the 2 hallways and then the big room. That is Proto-Freddy's. And it was a place to observe the Mimic while doing experiments, essentially, for William anyway. Then, fast forward however many years, Henry is looking to end everything. He's looking to gather everyone and destroy it. Well, and this gets very crazy here, that observation room already has a fake pizzeria with adjacent rooms around it. And above ground, at some point, there was a Freddy's location. So I think the business stuff, right, the lawsuits, the need to make a profit, all that's happening above ground. Maybe even the alleyway shots are happening above ground. But do we really, think for a second, do we really think Henry would have allowed those animatronics anywhere near that pizzeria? Or do we think that was the bait to put them in the box underground? So it's the same room. It's always been underground. If you want to get really crazy with it, and this is why it got brought up in the Psychic Friend Fredbear podcast, if you want to get really crazy with it, we go to Didophobia. Where in Didophobia, we learn that FNAF 4, according to Didophobia, was hallucinogenic gas in an underground room that someone would walk around in and nothing would happen. It's never been explained why in Sister Location we have a fuse map of the FNAF 4 locations. Almost as if this same observation room was part of a larger complex to do Didophobia, to put somebody down there, have them have hallucinogenic gas, and they think they're at a Freddy's location. And what would be good evidence for that to still be the case in the games? The fact that Henry's plan involves lighting everything on fire in those chambers. If hallucinogenic gas was already being pumped into this test area, all Henry would have to do is swap the hallucinogenic gas for something flammable. And then everything's already built for him. It lines up so well. So I genuinely think, and this is going to sound crazy without the preamble, I genuinely think this room starts as prototype Freddy's, and then William Afton turns it into an observation room for the Mimic, and then later he expands it to be a hallucinogenic testing chamber with a fake FNAF pizzeria, a fake block street with a fake house to run nightmare experiments, or whatever the hell the goal of Didophobia is. And then William dies. Many years later, Henry comes to it, sees everything happening, realizing this is a perfect place to lure and destroy everybody, does FNAF 6 at this location. New CEO buys up FNAF, bulldozes whatever old building was there, puts the Pizzaplex right on top. And at that point, Glitchtrap is speaking to Vanessa and Glamrock Freddy and gets them to dig down to find the old Proto-Freddy's. And in it, find William Afton's corpse. And more evidence for this? The massive Freddy head just outside of it from Security Breach. There's a massive Freddy head that never really gets explained in Security Breach, just outside of the underground pizzeria. And in Secret of the Mimic, we see the same Freddy head while it's still being built as likely a parade float or maybe a big top replacement, just outside of the pizzeria. It's all still been underground. It's just been a long time. It just makes too much sense. It really does. The only counter argument I can think of is that Pizza Sim shows us the alleyway pictures and the business stuff, but they're was at some point a Freddy's above there anyway. Very likely so anyway. So it could just be, that's the business, this is the dangerous part. That's my thinking anyway. If you disregard the business stuff, the alleyway pictures could still even be explained with the fake Freddy's thing. If there's a fake street corner and a fake house, there's a fake alleyway, you know? But regardless, I think that Proto-Freddy's is the same location. And actually, I have a video on this too. If I remember, I'll link it right here, where I actually go through the whole train of logic. But thank you for your question. And our last Patreon question today is from Renovar, she, they. Just a quick one concerning Secret of the Mimic and its endings. It seems like the secret ending is always assumed to be the non-canon ending due to it requiring a New Game Plus. And that makes sense until you consider the week before, in which the ending we know has to be canon, due to it being the one where he records the phone messages, also requires the book's version of a New Game Plus. So is it possible the canon ending... So is it possible it is the canon ending, and people have dismissed it without giving it the consideration it needs? I'm one of the people who never actually played any of the games, purely consumes FNAF from lore and theory videos, so I might be missing some important context. No, I think you have a good point. I'm actually going to combine your question with an email question of a similar caliber. So we're going to skip to our emails. And again, if you want your questions answered via email, you can send them to Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast at gmail.com. It's in the description, copy, paste, pin, type out. But I'm going to combine your question a bit with Truelock from the emails. I was just watching a slightly older podcast episode, and I thought that if MXES is supposed to keep the Mimic trapped, I feel like that means that Cradle.exe is the canon ending to Secret of the Mimic. This would likely mean that Arnold, my goat, is alive. I want to know what you think about this. My idea is that when Cradle happened, Arnold trapped the Mimic in MXES, which kept it in the David form, the small one at the end of Cradle.exe, which is why the Mimic grew at the end of Ruin. Just a thought, but it seems like it's worth looking into. So I got a little confused by this email at first, because it says the Cradle.exe ending, but then it mentions the Mimic was in David form, which only really happens in the secret ending. So I assume, Truelock, you mean the second ending, we activate Cradle.exe. No, it has to be the third one, right? Because the second ending, when we activate Cradle.exe, is the van, which we crash. So that's not great. So if you're talking about when Mimic is turned into David, the problem with the secret ending, right, is that if we make the Mimic David, we don't go up into Edwin's office to activate Cradle.exe. Because if you remember, that's the last thing we do. We go to Edwin's office, we access the surveillance room, we go to a monitor, very similar to the one we get the Mimic schematics from, but instead of getting the Mimic schematics, it says activate Cradle.exe. And that's when the end of the game begins. So as far as we're aware, in the third ending, Arnold doesn't actually activate Cradle.exe. However, to combine these questions, the reason I combine them, is the third ending possible? Right, because that's really what this is boiling down to. The new game, is the New Game Plus ending possible, and is the ending where the Mimic is David possible? I say it has problems. It is easy to dismiss the third ending by being like, oh, well, you need the White Tiger and Arnold cannot obtain it, so it's a New Game Plus ending, it doesn't count. There have been plenty of secret endings that are canon in FNAF, that alone doesn't super hold up. We need a little bit more. Even considering Moon.exe and how weird that is. Because ostensibly, the canon FNAF 3 ending is Happiest Day, which requires a whole bunch of weird stuff. So is the third ending possible? Yes. My argument would be that if the third ending happened, why is the Mimic so aggressive now? Because, in the end of the first and second endings, the Mimic is still aggressive, it is still a threat. And when we see the Mimic in Ruin, it is still aggressive, and it is still a threat. But the third ending, the Mimic is fixed. The Mimic is satiated. It's David again. So unless William Afton, then it seems silly to make the Mimic all better, essentially, and then and then like the next time we see it, he's not all better again. Like, what was the point of fixing him in the first place then? I think the role of the secret ending of Secret of the Mimic is to show us a potential way to fix the Mimic now. Like, this is potentially a way we can win. This is one of our options. Rather than something that had already happened before we even try. That being said, Cradle.exe and MXES is also an interesting combination. I do want to point out, to your point, Truelock, why the Mimic grew at the end of Ruin. So I think what you're referring to there is when we first meet the Mimic face to face, it's crouched in the corner. We see the eyes first, and then it gets tall, and then it attacks us. I don't think it was being David. For one, it was being Gregory. But for two, I've looked at that cutscene with the lighting like turned off, so it's just all bright, and he's not like child form like he is with David. He's hunched over. He's like crouched in the corner like a scared animal. And I think that is important to point out. That being said, it is still weird. I just, to me, MXES seems more like something keeping the Mimic out of the electronic systems rather than something physically restraining the Mimic. Because, Cradle.exe, I think, is similar to what happened to M1 and F10, F4, that this Mimic program is being held inside of this machine. But we know the Mimic's been talking to us on the walkie-talkie the whole time, so it's able to talk and move around, at least. So, I don't know. It's a big question mark. It is a big question mark. But I do still think the second ending is the most likely one, the one where we activate Cradle.exe, but before it can get its hold on the Mimic, the Mimic chases us down, gets the data diver, and wanders off. But thank you for your questions, the both of you. Last question from Musa, Z-Her. I was wondering, do you think lolbit is canon, and why? I hope so, because lolbit's my favorite character. But unironically, it's tricky. Lolbit doesn't super function like a canon character is the thing, right? Like, Lolbit very much seems like a fun character rather than a canon character. But Lolbit has a lot of very important roles. I mean, Lolbit's supposed to be seemingly the host / shopkeeper of 5 Laps at Freddy's. We see Lolbit have a prominent role in Custom Night and I believe in Ultimate Custom Night. I have not played the UCN that much, to be honest. But like Lolbit is such like a prominent character. It'd feel weird to not be canon, but then again, so is like JJ. Is JJ canon? I made a video a while back about right here, if I remember to link it, about what characters are and are not canon. And Lolbit definitely doesn't feel canon, but this was made before Secret of the Mimic. And now we know that, like, at least I theorize that the funtimes is William's attempt at recreating the Mimic. The funtimes is like William being like, I can make a Mimic, watch, and he makes the funtime animatronics. And if that's true, Lolbit could theoretically be his, like, Mimic program, right? The idea of, like, let me make these really articulate animatronics and take this really interesting program and input it. And lolbit is what happens when you don't input it and you leave it on, like, the computer or something. I could see that, but I have no evidence for it. That's all speculation. But that's if lolbit is canon, that's my best explanation. But thank you for your question. And I hope we're at time because I had to take a couple breaks, so I have no idea anymore, but we are going to call it here. Once again, if you want your questions answered on the podcast, you can send them in via Patreon or email at Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast @gmail.com, which is in the description because it's a pain to type out. But until next time, as always, thank you for watching the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast, where the pizza abilities are endless. We hope to enjoy future patronage. Bye-bye for now.